Hey, what is going on, everybody? And I hope you guys are having a very happy Thanksgiving. Hope you guys are enjoying the food that is about to come. If you haven't, already had all that food without being gluttonous, we don't want to do that. But we can be thankful of the food that the Lord has given us, and even more thankful of family and friends. I know my wife and I, we are going to head out after making this video. We're going to see family, we're going to see friends, all of our loved ones, and have a huge feast. I'm very much looking forward to that because I enjoy to eat. But before that, I want to make this video. And in today's video, I want to welcome you to part 4, the cycle of rot. That's what I'm going to go over in today's video. Now, if you remember my last video, I was talking about apples and oranges, where we went over what the Lord specifically says about seeds, a tree, the fruits that come from that tree, and then the seed that is in that fruit. That if I were to take an apple seed, right, and plant it and water it, then I should not be surprised when an apple tree forms, right? And if I continue to water that seed, I should not be surprised that apples come from apple trees. And then apples have their own seeds within them. And this is all true because this is what the Lord tells us in Genesis chapter 1, verse 11. I had to remember it for a second. So in today's video, I want to go over my cycle of rot. Okay, so please bear with me. Again, I'm going to just read from my journal, and I want to do that because I want to make sure I share with you guys everything that the Lord has shared with me. So let's get right into it. I planted and watered a seed. And because I continued to water that seed, from that seed came roots. And because I continued to water that seed, from those roots came a base. And because I continued to water that seed, from that base came a stem. And because I continued to water that seed, from that stem came branches. And because I continued to water that seed, from those branches came fruits. Fruits that I ate. Fruits whose seed was within itself. My branches indeed produced fruits, rotten fruits, fruits that I ate. And because my fruit was rotten, they had no nutritional value and did not sustain me. And because they did not sustain me, I continued to eat more of those fruits. Rotten fruits. And because those rotten fruits continued to not sustain me, I continued to eat more rotten fruit. And those rotten fruits continued to not sustain me. And I continued to eat more rotten fruits. And those fruits indeed had their seed within themselves. Rotten seed. Rotten seed that would end up producing more rotten fruits. You might ask, what seed did I plant that produced all of this rotten fruit? Let me tell you the story of my life. The story of my old tree. And that's going to be in the next video. So, yes, in the next video, I'm going to tell you guys essentially the story of my life. And you're going to see how the analogy of the seed, the tree, the fruits, the watering of the tree, you're going to see how the analogy applied practically in my own life. Even though the Lord was talking about the creation of physical trees, he helped me to realize that that also applies to the spiritual trees in my life, my old tree and my new. Just like he says in his word that from that seed will come the tree, and that tree will produce fruit that is of its own kind, of the same tree that it came from, and that fruit will have its own seed within itself. He says that about trees. Now, even though it's about the physical ones, again, he helped me to realize the same thing applies to our spiritual trees. And I know the same thing applies to our spiritual trees because it applied to mine, right? And I'm 100% sure the Lord is not only telling me, hey, Cornelius, this only applies to your spiritual tree, you alone. No, I'm pretty confident that what the Lord says is for all of us, right? So I know for sure that when the Lord talks about trees and how they form, how they grow, that it also applies to our spiritual trees. I know for sure it applied to my spiritual trees, my old one and my new. Now with my old one, I had an old seed, and from that old seed came an old tree, and from the old tree came rotten fruits. But here's my cycle of rot. My cycle of rot is that I took that fruit and then I ate it. Because I ate a rotten fruit, I'm sorry, like you're going to see my facial expressions a lot because I'm just like, I'm looking back on my life and I'm like, why would you do that? It just doesn't make any sense. But like the Lord says, as a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool will return to his folly. And I was a fool. So I'm looking back on my life and just seeing how foolish I was to grab this rotten fruit and then say, this rotten fruit looks tasty, and then I eat it, right? And then as it's digesting, I have no nutritional value. I'm not sustained. I'm not full, nothing. I get nothing from this. And because I got nothing, my grand decision was to eat more of the rotten fruit. So you see the cycle of rot. I eat a rotten fruit. I'm not sustained. I decide to eat more rotten fruit, continue to not be sustained, continue to eat more rotten fruit. And I'm just in a cycle over and over and over again. So like the Lord says, as a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool will return to his folly. And that's what I was doing. That was my cycle of rot. Around and around I went to rotten fruits, eating more and more of my old rotten fruits. That's why my last video, I emphasize, be very careful. We have to be very careful on the type of seed that we're planting. We have to be very careful because from that seed will come that type of tree. I can't plant apple seeds and expect a tree that produces oranges. Like it's not going to do that, right? So with me, I plant an old seed. From an old seed, an old tree is going to come. From an old tree, old fruits, rotten fruits. And then I'm going to eat those fruits, not be sustained, then go back to them, eat more of them. It's just, it was bad. But that's why my next video, I'm going to tell you guys the story of my life, the story of my old tree. So now we're going to shift. We're going to go from analogy to practicality, the specifics in my life, so I'm really excited to share that part with you guys, the story of my life, the story of my old tree with you guys. And one thing I want to make sure I leave you guys with is be very careful what you plant. And you can always be very careful with what you plant if you always go to the Lord first. If you acknowledge him in everything that you do, in every way, he will direct your steps. Trust in the Lord and lean not upon your own understanding as I did. Don't do it. In all thy ways, acknowledge him and he shall direct thy steps. I promise you he will. Not because I said it, but because he said it. And he definitely did it for me in my life, and I'm no better than you. So I know he will do it for you too. All right. That is the video, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.